This is Music, and this is another First Impressions video. Welcome to another First Impressions video. In these videos, I share with you my first impressions of the many CDs I've blind bought over the last couple of years. I'm going to talk about this handful of CDs in this video, and also an album that came out recently. But let's start out by looking at the CDs. Up first, Sarcasm Crematory. This is a compilation of sorts. You got material from 1987 to 1994. So you have like 8 main tracks and then a handful of bonus tracks. If you look at the cover artwork, you would expect it to be some kind of blackened stuff, but the songs on here can be divided into 3 categories: traditional metal, thrash metal, speed metal, and then in some songs they mix those subgenres up. And it's actually, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this. The bonus tracks are a bit rough around the edges, but the main tracks are actually pretty solid, I would say. Pretty damn good, actually. One thing that surprised me was how melodic the guitar work is. Even in some of the more aggressive songs, you have some really melodic guitar stuff going on. So I enjoyed that album quite a lot. Up next, Kings of the Universe by Skullview. On the back you have a Mordor looking kind of landscape and a hooded figure on the front. A muscle bound warrior riding a dragon. This is traditional metal, not new wave of traditional metal, but it's traditional metal with an edge of US power metal, I would say. So it has a bit of that punch that US power metal quite often has. It's mildly epic too. Some pretty cool, pretty good and cool and catchy vocal melodies, and some pretty well composed songs. It's actually pretty good, this release. If you like power metal, US power metal, I think you will enjoy this one. If you like traditional metal, you might enjoy it too. Even if you like happy, peppy, slappy Euro power metal, you might enjoy this one. I actually don't know if these guys are from the US, but the style is more US power metal leaning, if you know what I mean. Up next, Force of the Unknown by Slowgate. This is from 2002. The core sound is, I would say, kind of early 2000s modern thrash and 90s groove metal kind of mixed in together with a lot of elements from all over the 90s metal scene. So you have, like I said, some groove metal. You have some alternative metal. Even you have some sludge metal, you have some mildly doomy metal, you have some hard rock bits every now and then, even a bit of blues. So you know, it's a summary of and even a little bit of hints of melodeath. So it's kind of a summary of 90s metal. The vocals are your post Phil Anselmo kind of macho shouty vocals, which do get a bit annoying at the end of the day, but for the most part, you know, it's pretty good, quite enjoyable. If you like 90s metal, do check that one out. Up next, Alien Love Secrets by Steve Vai. Guitar centric, a little bit shreddy for sure, but more focused on guitar melodies, which I appreciate. For the most part, instrumental. There's one song that is technically not instrumental, because you have a kid shouting stuff and doing call response with Steve Vai's guitar. And a lot of people will think that is super cute. A lot of people will think it's super weird. I don't know where I stand on this, but it's certainly an interesting listen. So this is, to me, pretty good instrumental music to kind of have on in the background while working, which is exactly what I did with that one. Up last, Stillborn, State of Disconnection. Stillborn, it's a Swedish, I think, doom metal band. This one is from '92. You do have some doom metal elements for sure, but you have some really up-tempo parts. Some parts even fast. The guitar tone is pretty well defined actually, but you have some influences from sludge metal as well. You have some kind of southern rock influences too. You have some alternative rock influences as well. The vocals are a bit snarly. They also get a bit annoying in the long run, but it's okay. One thing that I think is interesting is that there seems to be an influence from Obituary as well. There are no songs that sound like Obituary. Well, I think it's in the first song, State of Disconnection, that there's a riff that sounds a bit like The End Complete, but they use chords, guitar chords, that I can recognize from Obituary songs that they use very often. And this is because I was in a band at some point. We really wanted to be Obituary, so we used those chords all over the place too. So it's pretty solid. I would say the core sound is still doom metal, but like so many other styles of metal in the 90s, doom metal got a bit weird, and I think that's what we hear on this one. But for the most part, a pretty solid doom metal release. Maybe doom / alternative rock or something like that. The most enjoyable ones were these two here, Skullview and Sarcasm, but the others were actually pretty enjoyable too. And then I want to talk about the new Metallica album, 72 Seasons. I don't have it because the singles they put out before they released the album did not convince me into wanting to pre-order it or buy it on the release date. And I know that you will expect me to probably completely dunk on the album now, but that's not gonna happen because it seems that there are kind of like two positions you can take within Metallica fandom. Either, you know, the first 4 albums are great, everything else is garbage, or Metallica can do no wrong, everything is a masterpiece. And I'm kind of in the middle, to be perfectly honest. I do love the first 4 albums. They are very important to me, and I think certainly Master of Puppets and Justice for All to me are masterpieces or thrashed pieces. So I love those first 4 albums. The Black Album, I've always been ambivalent about the Black Album. I quite liked how hard rock and heavy metal it was. I liked that the songs were simple and easy to play on guitars. Finally, I could learn how to play a Metallica song. That was amazing. And there are lots of good songs on that album for sure. But at the same time, I was also disappointed at the simplicity because these songs in the Black Album are not your musical journeys that you have certainly on Master of Puppets and Justice for All. So I was always a bit disappointed at that. I was also disappointed at the fact that they didn't play fast and thrashy. So as you can see, very ambivalent about this album. And I also don't think the Black Album has aged very well, but I still enjoy it. I still think there are very good songs on it. So I like the Black Album. Load and Reload to me are garbage. I don't like those albums at all. Saint Anger, believe it or not, I don't hate Saint Anger. I quite enjoy Saint Anger because, well, okay, the snare drum sounds weird. The guitar tone is weird. James Hetfield has an alternative take on what it means to sing on key. And it sucks that there's no guitar solo or anything like a guitar solo anywhere on that album, but they played fast again, and a lot of the songs that are not fast are very groovy. So I actually quite enjoy Saint Anger. There are some songs that are too long and bloated and boring. I will agree with people on that, but I'm not on the anti-Saint Anger side of things. Death Magnetic, I quite like that album actually. I like the guitar tone on that album, and I like a lot of the songs like My Apocalypse. Lulu, it's just weird. So bizarre that it's a fun listen. Hardwired to Self-Destruct is a very uneven listen to me. You have 4 songs that are absolute bangers on that album, and then a couple of songs that I think are decent, and then a lot of songs that are like from decent to, you know, totally uninteresting to me. So that's a very uneven listen. So as you can hopefully gather, I'm kind of in the middle of the road. I have a more maybe nuanced take on Metallica than you might expect on the internet. So what about 72 Seasons? I gave it a listen yesterday. I streamed it on YouTube. I just played the official album playlist. And before anybody says, how can you review an album and you've only listened to it once? It's not a review, it's a first impressions video. The entire idea of first impressions is I listen to the album once or twice for the first time ever and talk about my first impressions. So I think that counts. So I think 72 Seasons is, to me, it's a more of an even listen than Hardwired to Self-Destruct. This means that it doesn't, to me, have the same lows and uninteresting parts, or not as many of them at least, as Hardwired to Self-Destruct has. But it also lacks, to me, the absolute bangers. So it's a more of an even listen, and that means that I actually enjoy this album a little bit more than Hardwired to Self-Destruct. The style on here is not thrash metal, and you know, whatever, Metallica can play whatever style they want to play. It seems to me that you can divide the songs into 2 categories for the most part. Traditional heavy metal hard rock songs, not new wave of traditional heavy metal, but just heavy metal hard rock songs on the one hand, and then almost kind of like Black Sabbath groove, southern rock inspired songs with really groovy riffage. And there's even a song where Rob Trujillo plays some parts that sound a bit like something you could hear Geezer Butler play. So I think that's very interesting. There's lots of groove on here. There's some songs I think that are maybe a bit too long for their own good. But I have to say I enjoyed this album much more than I expected that I would. A lot of the songs have this kind of you know, staccato, mid-tempo, slightly mid to up-tempo, sort of stuff. And this is probably boring to a lot of people, but I actually quite like that kind of just stuff. On top of a very simple, just relatively, you know, mid to up tempo drum beat, because that is going to be perfect to listen to while bicycling to work. So this album actually has a strong kind of like a highway trip or road trip feel to it. It will be a great soundtrack for just going on the highway. Not on your bicycle though, are you crazy? So I think, yeah, I actually quite enjoy this album. It's not my favorite Metallica album at all. I enjoy it on par. I know a lot of people will lynch me for this. I enjoy it on par with Saint Anger, but remember that I kind of enjoy Saint Anger, yeah? There are some good riffs all over the place. There are also some boring riffs. You have, and this is actually quite interesting, James Hetfield doing kind of some new things, trying to hit some higher notes every now and then. He also uses some vocal melodies that are very, again, Alice in Chains and grunge and alternative rock-like, which is interesting. You have some, for the most part, very simple drum beats, but I think it works in this case. And I really like the bass tone, especially when it's distorted. There's some pretty cool parts with a distorted bass. So yeah, overall, I think it's a solid, it's a decent album. I enjoyed it more than I expected I would. Will I buy it? I will probably buy it in a month or 2 or 3 or whenever the price drops, because I don't like it that much that I'm willing to pay like 30 euro or 15 euro for a CD, or 30 euro or 40 euro for the vinyl version. And I don't know, I'll probably pick up the CD version or just a digital copy on iTunes or something, so I can listen to it on my iPod while bicycling to work. So that's my take on the Metallica album. It's not bad to me. Thanks for watching.